This episode was sponsored by Property, the leading real estate agent for all real estate transactions with a comprehensive ecosystem. They combine highly trained experts with the latest technologies on an intelligent platform to provide clients, brokers, and service partners with risk-free, flexible, and simplified services. Learn more at property.com. That's property with an I.com.
Two underlying themes across with the whole manufacturing industry, especially in the Western world. One, increasing workforce shortages, right? A lot of factories, they cannot find people anymore to work on the production lines. And that over time will become a huge challenge for the industry, but also for us totally as a society, right? If we cannot start producing food and beverage, this will have a lot of catastrophic downstream effects, right?
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvan.
Karim, very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Sylvan. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Amazing. That's the best starting point, I would say. Thank you. You're the co-founder and CEO of Cerrion, a startup developing digital AI workers for the manufacturing industry. And you use standard video cameras to monitor production and then detect deviations and respond to them on their own. That sounds like pretty fancy stuff. So we're going to dive into that and how you actually do that. Before we do so, you're originally from Egypt, but there you went to a German school. Why was that? That's not the most common thing you would expect.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So essentially, right, like growing up in Egypt, like the public schooling system is not as good as in Switzerland, right? There are a lot of international schools and that's the majority, right? Like where you can at least get not Swiss grade education, but at least like the closest to that. And the German system has always been known for being super strict, super tough, right? And which is, I think, my parents thought, okay, that would be a good way to build the right foundation early on, build the right discipline, as well as then it would open up having an additional language would always be beneficial, right? So if it's being able to speak Arabic, English, and something else is always like better. And I think then they fancy German more than the French system, for example.
Sounds like a very good combination. Then you actually came to ETH here in Zurich in Switzerland for your bachelor's degree. Why was Zurich then the logical next choice and not Germany after going to the German school already?
Yeah, so that was actually like, this had a bit of background to it. So during, maybe this also like jumps into other topics, but essentially like during where I was 17, 18, etc., I started to build this passion for tech, right? And generally entrepreneurship in general. I don't know, I just had watched The Social Network, right? And you had seen how Dustin Moskovitz, because he was a roommate of Zuckerberg, right? They built Facebook out of the dorm room, etc. And I was always like, okay, where can I find my Zuck? And then just complete coincidence, I saw, like I was looking at the best universities, right? And I saw that, okay, there is this university called ETH. It's in German. So okay. So I have at least the prerequisites for that. And it was always ranking as one of the top technical universities ever. So I had this assumption, okay, like if I go there, I will find a lot of very smart minds, right? So that was one side, and maybe hopefully find like the Zuck where I can be his Dustin. But the other point, it was also for me, I wanted to get completely out of my comfort zone. So nobody from my friend group would go to Switzerland. Like everyone would go to Germany. And I was always afraid going into the mode of just like staying with the same circles, doing the same stuff. So I wanted really to throw myself up in the like cold water. Like if I'm going to leave and go abroad, do it the right way and be fully on my own. Therefore, like Switzerland and Zurich was a perfect example, especially that I've never been to Switzerland before or Zurich before coming to ETH.
That's kind of crazy. You just decided to study and basically move and live here, and you've never been here before.
Yeah, I think I arrived the first time in Switzerland 4 days before the first university day. And I think that's good because you get like this shock and you experience the experience from all facets, right? Like, okay, now you're on your own. You need to figure out life. You need to figure out everything, which is cool in some ways. Of course, more challenging, right? Like you increase the level of hardness, but it was great.
I love that spirit, but when you think about the age, that was probably, you were 18 to 20 years old.
I think I was
assume.
17 or 18, yeah.
Even younger,
Yeah.
crazy. At that young age, to push yourself like that and jump into the uncertainty, I see it. Maybe we are a bit more naive because we don't think what could go wrong, but at the same time, to leave home, to leave family and friends behind, that really requires a push. Where did that come from, that you really wanted to push yourself and grow with that young age?
I think I was somehow used to hard things, and I also enjoyed like the challenge. Generally, I was, of course, the naivety part, right? Like I was like, okay, yeah, how hard could it be, right? I was super underestimated, for example, ETH, right? I thought, okay, I was good in math, I was good in physics. How hard could it be? Yeah. And then, of course, I fell completely on my face then when I came here. But I think while I was in Egypt, right, I played professional sports. I played water polo on a super high level. And I think this experience in these years essentially teaches you that it's good to do hard things. And I think over time also you start to enjoy that somehow, subconsciously at least. Yeah. And you always feel, okay, like I want to be challenging myself, otherwise I'm static. So I think maybe it came, like it's a combination of all of these things. Plus, of course, it's a great university, right? So it's also worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not forget about that. But then really this athlete's mindset that also helped you to really push yourself through and through. One other question. You then came here, you did your bachelor's, but you didn't do a master's. I am the same. And I had endless conversations with my parents about, why don't you go and finish your studies and all of that stuff? Why did you decide to not do a master's degree?
I generally believe in life, right? Like if you know where you want to go, like the shortest way between A and B is a straight line, right? Yep. So if I already know that I want to build something impactful, right? I want to go in this direction, there is no reason to go around the bush, right? And maybe do a master's first or try to do any experience, because at the end of the day, we all know there's nothing that can really make you ready except going for it and trying and going all in. Yep. So that was one component. Plus, it was great, right, at ETH, etc. But like also I missed being out of the world, in the world, doing things, trying and failing and so on. So I didn't see really the value of doing a master's. Yeah.
You mentioned the movie, The Social Network, before. Was that sort of the clicking point when he said, hey, I want to become an entrepreneur myself, or did that already happen early? Well, where does that drive come from to be an entrepreneur?
I think it came in like subconsciously, like very early, right? Like in Egypt, all value generation comes from entrepreneurs. Okay, so everyone in the world, but like I think when you're in a developing economy and stuff, like you get confronted with the need to be innovative, the need to build something enduring much more earlier than, for example, where if you grow up in Switzerland, because you have so many great career paths, right, where you can create a great life. So that has always been there at, okay, like if you want to have an impact in the world, if you want to be like a net positive, you should go out and endeavor on your own. The passion then to go with tech was started, right, because we also didn't have much touch points with technology, right? You don't hear about all of the like the metas, etc. of the world as much, right? You don't have computer science is not like it wasn't a big thing, right? And all of these topics, because like we are always a step behind. But once I started, looking at like these documentaries about Larry Ellison, right, and how he built a company from 0 to 100 billion out of their dorm room, right, etc. And then you see The Social Network, etc. So step by step, you see, okay, there is a completely different world out there, which is much more exciting, and where essentially the impact you can achieve much at a much larger scale and much faster. So I think it developed slowly over time. Plus, from a family full of entrepreneurs, right? So
that also helps.
Yeah, it was always like, okay, like you need to build something, right? It wasn't technology related to me, but you always had this mindset, right?
I like what you said, because it's sort of, you had role models all around you, but then through these stories that you said with the movies or with books or whatever, you then saw that they're also tech role models, right? So this combined, basically, role models all around you helped you to find your own path to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think like seeing that this super accelerated path to greatness is possible, right? versus like there is like this traditional way where you build traditional business. I don't know, you go into manufacturing, you go into agriculture or construction, and it takes you like really decades to get to a point where you have like high impact at scale, was now completely disrupted by the fact, okay, like technology is intrinsically this accelerated, and you can use it to really go fast and go big. And this happened only by like seeing what's possible and getting to the mindset, hey, if they can do it, why can't we do it from Egypt? Like,
absolutely,
in that sense, yeah.
Sales Playbook is Switzerland's #1 B2B sales and HubSpot agency for fast-growing entrepreneurs to increase pipeline, revenue, and sales efficiency through all-bound pipeline generation, sales enablement, and HubSpot services. Their 300-plus clients include Beekeeper, Bexio, Boostbar, and Brame, who have already achieved go-to-market transformations, such as scaling from 0 to 10 million ARR in 3 years, quadrupling their higher sales velocity, and reducing by 50% their sales customer acquisition costs after working hands-on with Sales Playbook. Go to thesalesplaybook.com to learn more. You came here with a plan, you got your bachelor's degree, and basically directly after your last exam, you really started working on Cerrion already, on your first startup, so to speak. So how did that go about? Because many people say, I want to build a company, I want to become an entrepreneur, but they don't really know where and how to start. So take us back to these early days. What did you do to get started that then helped you to get where you are today?
So I always knew, right? Like, I didn't believe in the fact that you need an idea to build a business, right? You need a pain point to solve, right? So you need to identify problems and not identify ideas. Like how you solve the problem evolves over time and requires iteration. So the task was always clear, right? Like I need to understand where are the biggest problems where we could at least try to solve and where it's worthwhile giving it a shot and going in. So that was one aspect. So it was clear the mission. I need to figure out what are the challenges in the world. And then I was super fortunate in the early days to get connected with I believe is one of the like most hardcore Swiss entrepreneurs out there. It's called Max Dietz. He's the founder of Shippo, which is like a SF unicorn, and also now Asaya, which is doing computer vision aviation. Super successful guy. And I got connected to him like super early while I was still actually like finalizing my last exams at uni. And he started like mentoring me and essentially guiding me in the direction, hey, like figure out the problem. If you find something worthwhile building, I will also fund you, right? I will mentor you, I will teach you. So that super grateful for having actually this opportunity, right? Like you see, it's all about like a lot of luck in play. So essentially I knew exactly what needed to be done, right? I think I had my last exam on a Wednesday. Next Monday, I started reaching out to different manufacturing companies, right? Because I knew I always want to do something in manufacturing, and it was very simple. Like, hey, what are your challenges? And that was during COVID, so early days of COVID. So I focused on the DACH region, so anywhere where essentially I can jump into a car and go visit them. And I was super surprised that people are willing to talk to you, people are willing to show you around, right? And explain their problems, and even you can build trust very quickly and start doing something. And that's essentially how I got started.
You also put in the work. You showed up in their factories or whatever to really better understand it.
Yeah, but I think that's at least like the minimum you could do.
Of course, but many people just want to take a call or do some desk research, and then you never get there to really build the trust and understand the problem. What were the problems that you then identified?
So there was like two underlying themes across with the whole manufacturing industry, especially in the Western world. One, increasing workforce shortages, right? A lot of factories, okay, they cannot find people anymore to work on the production lines. And that over time will become a huge challenge for the industry, but also for us totally as a society, right? If you cannot start producing food and beverage, this will have a lot of catastrophic downstream effects, right? That's on one side. And the other side, which is like the issue of today, there is a big lack of transparency on what are the things that go wrong on the production line. Everyone there would always this simple question, hey, what happened? Why did the machine break up? Why didn't we react faster? What happened in the night shift while the production manager wasn't there, for example? All of these topics. So we thought like an exciting enough problem of a now, like something if we solve today, we will deliver in quantifiable and quick ROI, but it's also necessary for the future of the industry, but also the future for us to be productive as a society and preserve our way of life.
And then, you should describe different problems, right? Yeah. How do you then decide, okay, was there enough repetition, or what made you decide, okay, here, that's the problem we focus on because here we can contribute with a solution, or what was the tipping point?
Yeah, so essentially that was during the time I also started, I got also connected to my co-founder, right, Nikolai, and he's one of the smartest people you will ever meet, right? And he's a hardcore computer vision guy. So essentially, it is a master's at ETH in computer vision, PhD in computer vision, built 2 computer vision companies. And during that time, he was the CTO of Asaya, and product was already ready. It's going to this scale up stage. So we knew, okay, a lot of the learnings, okay, actually computer vision, we had this unique insight into that, hey, you can actually now do a lot of exciting things with video and deep learning in real time, which enables you to mimic human perception. And we just took it from first principles, right? We thought, okay, people today go on production lines, they look at what's happening, they try to reason somehow and take actions. This seems like a nice thing, or a straightforward way to leverage AI to automate. So we started essentially thinking, okay, cameras are commodities, video AI solves the problem. And then you can, if you have this eyes in the sky, right, style approach, you can get to autonomy. So you can connect the dots and solve the problem at scale. But what we did first is, hey, let's just try different things out. So we started whenever we would engage with someone, just without having doing a lot of big strategy or big market research, someone would have an exciting problem. They have high enough urgency that they want to solve it, and tell them hey, let's do a pilot, let's try, let's do some tests and see, okay, what's possible, what's not, try to figure it out. And what surprised me is that actually people were willing to pay money for that stuff, right? Without any trust, right? I was 21 years old at that time.
Yeah, right? They didn't know if you would deliver or not.
Yeah, I was 21 years old, right? And just fresh out of university. And then they would directly maybe sign 20, 30, 40K contracts to test stuff out, which I say is incredible, also privilege also to have. And then I am super thankful to a lot of this early adopters and everyone who trusted us in the beginning.
But at the same time, it also shows that the problem was big enough that they spent money on it.
Exactly. So that was you always look for these signals, right? Okay, when people put money where their mouth is, right? That's the strongest signal you're looking for. But we also had a fundamental belief that if you at some point want to run autonomous manufacturing or lead this dark factory or everyone's goal, which seemed too super far away, you need to have the supervision, right? You need to be able to replicate today what the humans are doing on the line. So there was this one, okay, we know the world needs this. This is the future, and it's a huge opportunity because if you think how big is the manufacturing industry, right? It's more than 15 trillion of annual GDP, right? But at the same time, of course, you need the thing that you can sell today that delivers ROI today and delivers value today. So we started knowing all of these different things. And then at some point, we were able to get enough signals and get enough understanding from the technology and see, okay, we can actually solve this problem at scale, which makes most sense. And that was focusing on already automated production lines, right? Where you can already go next level of automation and get it to the closest level of stability, right? Where you can have then one operator, instead of managing one production line, they manage 2, they manage 3, etc., and do much more intellectually simulating tasks versus just having an eye that everything is good and just running around to make sure things don't escalate.
So you significantly increased the efficiency of the supervisor or the whole production, basically.
Exactly. In the beginning, right? We were just we first started with just detecting issues and then telling them about it, right? So augmenting them in that sense. And then over time, providing more insights, right? So not just detecting when something goes wrong, but also being able to classify these problems. So help them triage what is high priority and what is not, and deliver that. So it was initially a pure software play. But then over time, we realized, okay, software didn't really break through in manufacturing for multitude reasons. And we always ask, okay, if you want to really now build a generational company, if you want to build $100 billion company there, you need to do some things different. Yeah. And this essentially pushed me, okay, I said, okay, I cannot wait for this automation vision any longer. We need to push now as fast as possible to be able to say, hey, no, this is really end-to-end AI agent or digital worker.
Yeah.
Right. And that essentially pushed us to go this direction.
But you don't install any hardware yourself, or do you?
So we use standard off-the-shelf hardware, right? So the ideal scenario is they already have the cameras monitoring the production, and then we just like plug into that and then integrate with their existing systems and equipments, which is also about just like sending out signals and getting inputs. In the worst case, if that's not already there, we might ship them standard hardware, which then the plant installs on their own, which is a great thing about the camera, right? You can put it anywhere. It's super easy to install. It doesn't require any expert knowledge in that sense.
And it also got so much cheaper compared to a few years ago.
Exactly, right? So when you have this commodity hardware, it's also like a lot of the considerations, right? Nobody wants to put super expensive hardware because things can break, things can happen. Yeah. And then you get it to the point that it's easy to implement for them also from a resource. You're hitting all of the check boxes, right? It's easy to install, easy to implement. So low investment on that front. Quick ROI because it's clear how you detect issues, react faster, reduce downtime and safety risks. And 3, it's super importantly strategically because if you don't have that in the future, you can forget being able to run more unmanned, which then puts you at huge risk.
Absolutely. Right. Who is your typical customer that you work with? Of course, manufacturing, but manufacturing is so
big,
broad,
exactly.
right?
So we focus on like anyone who's essentially like manufacturers who are running automated interconnected production, right? And we had so you think anything of like CPG, any of the commodities, right? Steel, wood, cement, etc. All of that applies under this market. But our approach was always, hey, we want to be very systematic about it, and we want to go deep and understand real pain points and really transform the industries and get this point where we create a new standard on how they operate. So we started out in the glass industry, so glass packaging. So essentially think of everything from Coca-Cola bottles, beer bottles, water, Nutella jars, but also pharma containers. And now we're deployed to glass plants across 8 different countries. And from there, from all of the learnings, we're able to expand to adjacencies, so tableware, etc., and so on. And now we're at the point where we're going even then beyond, right? So we validated that we can do and scale. We built a great product which has high utility and adds this value. And now we're going into different industries while doubling down our core.
Amazing. And how does the tech work in that sense? Because I imagine if you work in the cement industry and you produce cement, that's quite different from glass bottles, right? Yeah. How do you adapt and make the tech work in so many different environments? So
I think there are 2 components, right? One is like on the AI side, right? And the other one is essentially the customer facing part, right? So the product they perceive. And at the end of the day, the product they perceive is always the same, right? Because you detect an issue, you have escalation mechanism which you want to configure based on your setup. So that doesn't change. You want to be able to get the reports and the data and the insights on where the largest areas of opportunities are. This doesn't matter, right? Whether producing bottles or cement. So that's one great point, right? It's exactly the same UI because at the end of the day, what matters is, are you building a product which fits in seamlessly in production workflows, so in the workflows of production teams, and these are the same. They have shift meetings 9 a.m. in the morning, right? Depending, it might be earlier or later. Yeah. They have the same structures, right? The same hierarchies, etc. So in that sense, spending all of this time with our initial customers was super high ROI, right? Because you can scale it everywhere. Then the other point comes, which is I think the more interesting part, is like, okay, how do you actually get AI models that are universal to that? And here we developed essentially a lot of proprietary stuff focused on self-learning, self-supervised learning. So essentially the idea is, if you focus on an automated production line, the process in a normal operation should always look the same, right? It shouldn't have deviations. And this gives you a great prerequisite to learn what's normal and be able to identify deviations from there. And then if you build an easy workflow for the user to be able to provide feedback, you can fine-tune it as you go. So we get a good foundational base model based on all of the learnings you have. And then you're able to fine-tune it to every specific production line and get some easy thumbs up, thumbs down user feedback. So you are able to get exactly what they care about. Yeah.
I love that. And there's a flow always in these production lines. So you probably see it pretty fast if the flow is interrupted.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And a lot of our team members, right, like are super good in like all of this like cycle detection, right? Like Matteo, one of our computer vision engineers, published a paper called CI, which essentially can automatically identify cyclic processes and learn the cycle. And based on that, detect deviations, and then you can classify them on top so that you get the full the full circle.
Amazing. You talked about integrations. Something I love about integrations is you don't have to replace an existing system, which might be very difficult to do, right? They run on this system. So if you want to replace it, it probably takes 2 or 3 years of sales cycle. You plug into the existing systems, if I understand that correctly. How do you exactly do that? Because that helps you to sell faster, I assume. You don't have to replace any existing system, but at the same time, you also probably have to then build API integrations and other stuff to really be able to show and deliver the value.
I think it was very important for us in the very beginning that we can prove value as a standalone, right? So, okay, hey, if just like you see, like you want to capture 50% of the ROI, we can do it completely in an isolated manner because, hey, we just like install cameras. We don't need to change anything in the process, right? You don't need to stop the line and do any changes. You very easily can just like use these insights to drive improvements, react faster, detect issues, and so on. But then if you want to maximize the ROI, you want to be integrated, right? You want to be as deep as possible into their process. And as soon as you win the first trust, because they already see the value, they already validate it, it also becomes they are the ones pushing for the further integration. And from our side, I don't really care what machines they're using or how the production line is set up. I build the product in a modular way that can adapt and is configurable depending on their existing setup. So one I need to do is be able to send out signals and the different protocols, right? And there's just like a handful. And from there on, it scales.
Makes sense. Talking about pricing also, how do you price your solution? Is it a traditional subscription model for your customers?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's at the end of the day, how many digital workers do you have deployed, right, on different processes, right? And that's also super aligned with their business case because they know, okay, like if I can automate or if I can optimize my organization on this part of the production, it's very easy to calculate. Or if I can reduce downtime on these processes, that's how I calculate that. Right. And in an ideal setup at the end of the day, you monitor all of the plant, right? All of the critical production areas and pricing then scales and goes down with that, which is super flexible.
Yeah. That's sort of value-based pricing in that sense. The more value, the more you pay, right?
Yeah.
You talked before about the pilot projects that got you started. You did 20, 30, 40K project with customers. How do you then switch these projects, these paid projects to, hey, now you become subscription customer, so to speak? Did that just happen organically because you showed more value and then it was sort of a very natural thing that, okay, now you just switch to our product as we developed it on the go?
Yeah, I think there are 2 points. First of all, you obsess on the customer pain points, right? So you go away about like, this is a technology you want to try versus, hey, this is a pain point you have today, which is quantifiable, which is severe. And we are here to help you solve it. Did we help you solve it or not, right? So we obsess on that front. And then, which is very closely related to that, you obsess on the proof of value, right? Because if you know what the pain point is you're tackling, which is relevant to them, and you know how you're tackling it and you're measuring the outcome, you can very then easily showcase, okay, that was your status quo before, that's your status quo now, that's the impact you're having, and that's the transformation, and that's where you can go. And and this conversation essentially drove our customers to expand very rapidly with us.
And your customers are, I think you mentioned it before, 8 different countries over here in the US, in Germany, Italy, Turkey, basically all over the world. How did that internationalization happen? Was that just like inbound leads or referrals that sort of happened? Or did you have a broader strategy saying, no, we want to go to the US from day one as fast as possible?
I think like manufacturing is oftentimes a consolidated industry, right? So we have a lot of players who have global operations. So from day one, we knew that we need to build the organization in a way that can also cater to them, right? And from there on, that happened organically, right? We got, of course, a lot of inbound happens, but also when you target a company, you're going to know that, okay, this company has operations in 8 different countries, and you don't want just to be able to serve their plant in Germany, but you want to be able to serve the whole organization across all of the countries where they're deployed. No. So that's essentially how it came about.
And I imagine for you as a founder, it sounds amazing. 8 countries, you're very international. But for you as a founder, that also increases another challenge, how you prioritize and spend your time. How do you do that? Because I imagine probably every week something changes. You have more or then somewhere less responsibilities. This constantly shifts. How do you prioritize and set the focus on how you spend your time?
Yeah, that's, I think, generally like super hard. Like it seems like easy to solve, right? But generally is, I think, one of the hardest things for founders. And I remember who said that, but maybe Michael Seibel from YC is always like, hey, you should always go where you are procrastinating the most, right? Like the thing you're avoiding to do, that's probably the highest ROI and highest impact thing to do. Yeah. Like behind my desk in my office, I have like a poster which says, do the hard things first. And I try for myself to use that as the guiding principle, everything in life, right? Whether it's also in the gym, right? Like the workout you hate doing is probably the best one for you. But also on the personal aspect, right? The conversations you're avoiding to having are probably the best ones you should have. No. So that's where I try to steer the direction. And then, of course, always you got to sometimes focus on the wrong things. So the key point is, hey, how can you reflect very quickly and also move and reiterate if that happens?
Right now in January 2025, where do you spend most of your time, if that's even quantifiable?
No. Yeah. I think I'm still spending 60-70% of the time with our existing customers. Yep. And then the 40% of the time is about with new customers, different industries, right? Trying to learn more about where all of the industries we can value, right? There are different pain points, but also now at the point where we're really scaling our business, right? Going into moving away from founder-led sales to really building a sales team and etc. Getting this engine up and running, right? So really focusing on building a go-to-market machine that enables us to go from 1 million to 10 million, 10 million to 100 million and beyond.
And that's the critical part, because then you need sort of to multiply yourself and build the processes and hire the right people. Yeah, it's
exactly
like a
right.
game.
And you want to have people who are better than me, right? And that you want to have processes that are ready to scale, but also that enable us to grow fast, right? And be an outlier in the industry, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned Michael Seibel before from YC. You yourself got into YC with Cerrion in 2022. What was the experience like? Many founders aim to do what you did, so we're really curious to hear it firsthand.
Yeah. No, like I think if I summarize it in a few words, it's like, first of all, it's a super cool experience, right? So I would recommend every founder to do it because you get into really, they're an accelerator, right? You get really in this acceleration mode, and they do it super simple by just like making sure that you are held accountable to whatever you said you want to do, right? And people underestimate that, but like that's a super powerful tool.
Mm-hmm. How do they do that? You have an example?
Yeah, you have these group office hours, right? Where you are there with your YC partners, but 4 other maybe startups. Mm-hmm. And then every founder, you're in front of all of these founders, you set a goal for the next 2 weeks. Right? And the goal is ambitious. And then after 2 weeks, everyone comes in and asks you, okay, what did you do to hit this goal? Where do you stand? And it's a super bad feeling if you sit there in front of other founders and you're sorry, we didn't do much there, right? So just like this, somehow like this social pressure, which is, I think, very healthy in that sense, right? Because it's pushing you in the right direction, accelerates you in a way which is if you think of it, it's super basic, but
simple but powerful.
Simple but super powerful. Yeah. All right.
Did most founders hit the targets that they set out for these 2 weeks, or did most get close but didn't fully hit them?
You hit them sometimes, you don't hit them sometimes. I think it's also good that you don't hit them, because if you hit them means you're
not ambitious enough.
Not ambitious enough, right? It's at least pressuring you in the right way and giving you fuel, right? So that's one aspect. The other one is, I think, the network of founders you get connected with. And I beginning, everyone was saying that, but I wasn't really being able to add like value on like what's actually the value of that, because most of us maybe are still early stage founders and so on. So it's not that you can take a lot of from their experiences with you and so on. But being in a group of like-minded people who are super ambitious, who are building a lot of stuff, is alone on itself an accelerator. Right. And then there's what a lot of people underestimate. It's not just like the network of your batch. It's you also have access to the complete YC community. So that was something, for example, which was super then clear when we fundraised. Like we had a lot of ex-YC founders join us as angels, or actually like do bigger tickets. And then these founders are really the pinnacle, right? So these are the 0.001% of operators, where you see, okay, like I have angels, right, who went from 1 to 10 million, I don't know, 8 months, etc., with their own respective businesses. So we, that this ambition, right, and this goal setting is not far away, right? It's like very tangible to see these growth stories. It's not just like something we hear about when we read, about what OpenAI is doing and so on. Yeah. And I think that's an extremely powerful tool, especially if you're not from SF, right? If you're not in the US or you don't have like initial opportunity to start out there.
I love that network part. And I think we'll talk about it with the fundraising in a few minutes as well. This is incredibly powerful and probably one of the USPs of YC. At the same time, I could imagine going in there as a first-time founder, you might also feel this, how they call it, the imposter syndrome, right? Where you feel there are all these great people in that network that build amazing companies. How am I ever going to do that? That it could also be like too much pressure. Did you ever feel something close to that?
I think you don't need YC to feel imposter syndrome, right? As a founder.
Fair enough, yeah.
Right? So definitely, that's definitely a component, right? And that's, I think, one of the biggest generally challenges, because you're always an imposter, right? Like your role is changing continuously. If you're not, then you're probably not growing or being ambitious enough. So that's, of course, a fair challenge, and how you deal with this pressure is like a key point, where also I'm still learning and I'm still evolving. I'm still trying to figure out how to manage it in a better way. But I think it's still needed, right? It's like I'd rather have that and feel that, okay, the world is at my fingertips, than be completely far away from that.
Fighting all of that alone. I think also with these top shots that you have access to, if you can then talk to them about that, they probably all went through similar experiences, right? Yeah. And that alone already can be very helpful.
No, I think it's generally exactly, it never gets easy, and then because it humbles you also all the time, right? You always get humbled, you always learn more. So yeah, it's super valuable to have this network. And if you combine everything together with, then you get out of the experience, I would say it's great.
And I also wonder if you have any tips, because many other startups, they want to get into IC as well. Do you have any recommendations for them on how they can best do that, or maybe who can and who cannot get in?
I think what YC wants to see, but like, of course, like I cannot speak on their behalf, or like general investors, is like this bias towards action and the bias towards the right action. Like you asked me before, like, hey, how do you make sure you do the hard things, right? And the hard things are obvious, and what needs to be done are obvious, right? It's talk to customer, ship fast, put it in the hands of user, and get feedback. But these are super hard, mainly emotionally and psychologically, right? Because reaching out to people, putting yourself out there, getting rejected, like, is tough. It's not easy, right? Talking to people who maybe ridicule you, or like you get not so always nice feedbacks. Not everyone is in the mood to help. And at the same time, putting work in a half-baked product, right? Which is like essentially like launching fast and getting shut down from people or getting bad feedback can be emotionally tough, right? But that's the thing you need to do. And that's the thing, or depending how you view it, right? It can be emotionally tough, or you can view it as a learning, as a growth opportunity. And I think being able to show this bias towards action, taking action, doing the right things, and moving into this direction is the best thing you can do for YC, and for you, mainly for your company, right? You shouldn't build a company and approach it for investment, but for your company, for yourself, but also if you want to get into YC or attract any kind of investment.
Fully agree. I think there's sometimes a bit counterintuitive, right? People think I have to look perfect, or I have to do this and that to look good for YC. But that's the wrong angle, I feel. Because if you do something that is valuable, something that people care about, YC wants to have you and not the other way around.
Exactly, right? And I don't remember who told me that, but like someone was joking and saying, actually the best pitch deck is only 3 numbers, right? Your revenue, your growth, your burn, that's it. And you don't need anything more than that. And everything around that is because you cannot show, make it exciting.
The storyline,
exactly on these 3 numbers. And the good thing about YC is the way they approach it, right? You cannot do anything with showing, you cannot do a pitch deck, etc. You just like have super basic questions. You need to be articulate and not bullshitty about your answers. And based on that, they make the decision if they invest in you or not. So that's a way they filter out, I think, or at least they try, which I believe is a super hard job to do.
Absolutely. But I love that. Revenue growth and burn. Amazing. Focus on the basics.
Focus on the basics, yeah.
Another basic as a founder often is fundraising. You went through that. You recently raised a 5 million round also from YC. What was the fundraising story behind there? What was sort of the story that you shared with investors where you want to take the company that got them all excited?
I think it's the same one like I mentioned before, what motivates us to build Cerrion, right? Yeah. Manufacturing is a huge opportunity, right? It has a severe challenge today and it's not getting better. If we don't solve workforce shortages, that will have huge impacts, not just for the industry, but really for all of us. Prices will go up, supply will go down, and so on. So technology is needed. We believe that our approach is essentially the best way to get there, given that it's scalable, right? Delivers quick ROI, easy to implement, and also easy to expand. Mm-hmm. And then we're able to show that we're a great team, right? And we're able to already execute, right? When we were there, had already released, had something up and running, right? It was like a super minimal viable version from what we have today, but at least we shipped product, right? We had it deployed in real life environments on shop floors. I think it was, we had deployment in Czech Republic and Turkey and the UK. That was our first deployments. And then we were able to essentially convince or get 150K or something in revenue, just like based on the slide deck, right? Which showed this bias towards action, right? We were doing the important things. And then, of course, having the YC brand and being able, this validation helped a lot in having an accelerated process. And then we had amazing investors, right? So everyone from, I don't know, Justin Khan and Robin Chan, right? But you're able to invest big and just like buy into the vision, and us as a team. Session VC here in Switzerland, right here, the founder of Bexio, a lot of incredible angels. And of course, we had already the support of Max Dietz, right, from the beginning. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. A really strong team coming together. You're always sort of, it seems, striking the balance between the US and Europe. And I wonder, why are you as a founder, you're based here in Zurich, right? Yeah. So why is that the right place for you still, with all the US connection and the international business?
Like if I probably had all options in the beginning, maybe I would have gone to the US, but like keep in mind, right, I'm not Swiss, I'm Egyptian, I have an Egyptian passport, right? So that's also like, there was this traditional constraint. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is, over time, like you learn, first of all, the talent density here is super strong, right? And I think that's now like, being like everyone's saying that, but that's actually a fact, because if you're building a company with impact, right, and be to one of the hottest startups here, you can really get the best talent in Switzerland. And I don't believe that the best talent in Zurich is worse than the best talent in SF or less hardworking, right? Like we have a lot of engineers who still commit code at 12 a.m. in the evening and they work through the weekends if necessary and so on, right? So I'm very bullish on the team we have here. And then I think another point, which is also oftentimes the argument for San Francisco, or everyone says that San Francisco is a very boring city. I don't think Zurich is as boring, but it's still like a small town, right? And you get a lot of efficiency gains. Like I walk 15 minutes to the office and I walk 5 minutes to the gym, right? So I can spend much more time working.
Versus 2 hours in traffic every morning.
On Cerrion, etc. And you get all of these efficiency gains. Yeah. And then on the other topic is we started out, because during COVID, we started out with European manufacturing companies, and then it's all global. So there's not one hub. Probably the US would be one, but we're also expanding there, right? And maybe we will have an office there, right? And maybe we will move at some point depending on what's needed. So I'm always reevaluating this question. But Zurich is a great place to build from, and I think more founders here should focus on Zurich, especially with the talent, everything you have to be able to push.
We love to hear that, because often we will talk again, when you get into the big growth round, and then often startups move abroad for VC reasons or whatsoever. And I would like to avoid that if possible.
Yeah, but I think now, like we see now capital, like the borders are being dropped, right? And
that's true.
In terms about capital, right? So the key point here, hey, where can you still keep building a big, like what you scale, keeping this talent flywheel going, right? Yeah. Where will it be easier to cater to like different customers? Like today we have customers in the US, right? We're serving them from Switzerland and we don't see any issues in that. If at some point that becomes a blocker, we reevaluate, right? But it's also about how you build the product, how you build your service in general and your processes. Yeah. That doesn't take into consideration borders.
Hey, Swisspreneur listeners, did you know we have a monthly newsletter? That's right. On the first Friday of every month, we send out a digest with all the newest developments of the Swiss startup scene. From upcoming events to growth hacks and free resources to community stories and recent funding rounds. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe. You won't regret it. I think you mentioned a really important point. We had the same with the previous software company. We were serving all the US customers from Switzerland. And I feel if the problem that you're solving is big and relevant enough, that actually works. If you feel like, oh, I have to go to the US, I need to open an office there to be able to tap into that market, I feel that's often the wrong approach, because then you go there and you only realize after a lot of time and a lot of money spent that maybe your solution doesn't really solve the right problem in that market. And it's a huge waste of resources.
Exactly right. You can go quickly. And then at the end of the day, like if you need to have late calls or like, for example, today, right? I had in the morning a call with Australia. I woke up at 6 a.m. and took it, right? So for them, it was, they perceived it's the same if I was sitting them with Australia, right? And then you stretch a bit of the time zones. If you want to have calls with the West Coast, right? You take it at 11, 12. It's also not the end of the world, right? So there are ways to bypass that, and then you just like want to be super responsive to them. You don't want to make the customer feel that you're not there with them.
Exactly.
And I think then you're doing a great job.
And even that, by not being there, you're probably way faster than most of the other partners who are based in the US.
Yeah, I think then it becomes down like the fair game, right? You need to build a better product, better understand your customers, obsess about them, and do the right thing.
Yeah. Let's also talk about the future. You raised your 5 million. Yeah. What are the next milestones that you tackle? I feel you're on to a really, really exciting journey.
Yeah. So essentially, like now, like really one of the biggest major updates is really moving into this digital AI workers or AI agents, what they call, which is not just like you detect something, but you can act autonomously on it, right? Yep. So for example, you see a production jamming up, you automatically stop it, issue an alarm, alert the relevant stakeholders and so on, right? So we're doubling down on that and building more capabilities, more customizability for the customers and making it much easier and faster to deploy. But the second one is really now start expanding into different manufacturing verticals. That's like top of my priority list, because I want to see like the same impact we had in our initial industries be transferred to others, because we see them get more efficient, get more sustainable, significantly reduce safety risks, right? Like if we're sitting here in Zurich and we see, okay, our AI detects an issue on a plant in Italy and then automatically reacts to it to prevent the machine from burning down, like that's super fulfilling, right?
Huge. Yeah.
So how can we scale that up as fast as possible and continue being excited also to our team, right? And continue pushing them in the right direction.
It's so cool. We really closely follow your journey and cheer for you from the sidelines. To wrap up the conversation today, Karim, I have some rapid fire questions for you. So I give you a short question or different options to choose from. You have to answer in maximum one sentence.
Yeah, sure.
Do you sometimes miss playing the professional water polo?
Definitely, yeah. That I think one of the coolest highs to go in the intensity. You work all your year up for one single match and all comes down to it. Yeah.
Now you just changed the game. Now you play the business game.
Yeah, now I changed the game. It's still super high intensity, but yeah, oftentimes I miss playing sports professionally.
I imagine. Would you ever go back to school to get a master's? I think I know the answer.
It would not to get a master's like a degree, because I don't value that as much now. But I think I'm generally like always open to learn and I'm super curious. So I might go back to broaden my horizon, right? And if I ever have time to dive deeper into some technical topics, I think I'd be very happy to do so.
Cool. And what has being the CEO at Cerrion taught you?
The tumbles you, right? Like shows you like even like the highs and lows, they could come and go very quickly, right? So helps you to stay sane, right? Stay balanced. If you're winning for a while, doesn't mean like you have it all figured out. If you're also losing for a while, doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. And I think it helped me build more resilience, right? Professionally, but also personally.
Talking about your co-founder, Nikolai, what quality does he have that you don't have and vice versa?
Yeah, so so Nicola is like super resourceful, right? Like he's one of the most resourceful people I ever know. Like even outside, right? So if whenever I have something like broken at home, right, I need someone to help fix it. Nicola is like the go-to person, right? And this is super practical or super impactful in an early stage startup, right? Because you need to be resourceful, you need to figure stuff out. Yeah. His ego is always left in front of the door, right? Like I remember, like he's a guy who's built 2 companies. Last of them aside, more than 50 employees globally, has a PhD, and then he would sometimes go up, like when very early days, he would climb a ladder to like wire a camera in high heat, right, and do like basic electrician work, and not complain about that and enjoy that, right? And so that's something where he's much better than I am, right? Like he's more resourceful in that. Maybe I'm more long-term strategic thinking, and I think this balance, right? Like he's also, in the way we lead, I'm a bit more like the sports background, so a bit like the more pushy version. We balance each other out on that sense. So yes, it's a great co-founder to have.
I love that. You mentioned you also like to go to the gym and hit the gym. What is your workout that you hate the most there? What's the one that you always procrastinate?
I actually hate legs.
Yeah. Classic.
I hate legs. I hate training legs. I hate squatting. Yeah. But
it is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
And the last question for you today, Egypt or Switzerland? I know it's a very mean question to end.
It's a very mean question. My first and last love will always be Egypt, right? Like that, and my biggest goal in life will be able to repay and like take all of this impact and bring it back there. But I also love Switzerland. I love Zurich. I love the opportunity to build out of here, and then it's a beautiful country. It's probably like for now, like now building Cerrion, I don't think there is a better place to be.
Amazing. That's the perfect way to end the interview. Karim, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. All the best and lots of success for the future.
Thanks, Silvan. Very cool.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.